Steve Israel, are providing technical assistance, goodness gracious. And Ted Goldman is our music director. Yes, please be aware that we are recording this service, thanks to Kevin, and it will be posted on our YouTube page. For privacy, we do pause the recording during Joys and Concerns, so that will not be broadcast on our YouTube page, but people who are watching at home, I think, will see the Joys and Concerns. Is that correct, Kevin? That the people who are Zooming will get to hear the Joys and Concerns at home? Yeah, but it just won't be broadcast when we put it on our YouTube page. At the end of the service, after we extinguish the chalice, we will have announcements. And I know Joe wants to make sure he makes one. We joined together this morning to seek justice, equity, and fairness in the world. Our hearts are touched by the human need we feel around us, whether far away or within reach of our hands. We come here to be together because this is how we believe our lives are best lived. In questioning and in conversation, in compassion and in service, in gratitude and in joy, in companionship and in love. It is good to be together with you this morning. If this is your first service at MVUUC, I think I only see, are you folks? Oh no, you've been here before. I remember Aaron from when he was a little kid. That taught you in RE many years ago. If this is your first service at MVUUC, but do note that we are a diverse group with varying interests and beliefs, and our services are varied in format, tone, and topic. We encourage you to attend or view several services to gain a good understanding of our congregation. And complete one of the, if you haven't already done it and you aren't on our email list, complete one of these blue cards with the information and leave it up on the greeting desk so we can make sure you start getting our weekly emails. Let's see here. Now's the time to just stop and think about all of your friends at MVUUC, whether they're here today or whether they're at home, whether they're in Florida, wherever they are. Greet the ones that are here today in person. And those of you watching on Zoom, greet people in the chat box. Let's support one another. Go ahead and take a few minutes. All right. Oh, goodness, let's see here. The chalice today is going to be lit by Rich Fernandez, who is Noel's dad, and he's visiting from Florida today. So come on up. So, yeah, I said, what are you doing here, Rich? Come on up, Rich, and light the chalice, and we will join in reading the words here. Oh, I gave him a lesson in how to light it already. I gave him a lesson, and while I was doing it, I set the tablecloth on fire. I said, Rich, don't do that when you light the candle. Please join me in reading the words for the chalice lighting that are in your program. We light this chalice in hope that we may always remain a strong community that supports, challenges, and cheers us. And now for our first musical selection, I'm going to turn it over to Ted.
So for our first music, we're doing something from Hamilton. And if you manage to miss it, there is a sing-along section, so I'll lead you into that part. But what's happening basically is King George is speaking to the American colonies, saying, "Oh, you'll miss me, you'll be back." The name of the song is "You'll Be Back," and it's full of King George professing his love. But if you change the word love into taxes over and over again, you'll see that the song makes a lot of sense. So this is "You'll Be Back" from Hamilton. You say the price of my love's not a price that you're willing to pay. You cry in your tea, which you hurl in the sea when you see me go by. Why so sad? Remember we made an arrangement when you went away. Now you're making me mad. Remember, despite our estrangement, I'm your man, and you'll be back. Soon you'll see, you'll remember you belong to me. You'll be back, time will tell. You'll remember that I served you well. Oceans rise, empires fall. We have seen each other through it all. And when push comes to shove, I will send a fully armed battalion to remind you of my love. Da 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 da. You say our love is draining and you can't go on. You'll be the one complaining when I'm gone. And no, don't change the subject, 'cause you're my favorite subject. My sweet submissive subject. My loyal royal subject. Forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, and you'll be back like before. I will fight the fight and win the war for your love, for your praise, and I love you till your dying days. When you're gone, I'll go mad, so don't throw away this thing we had. 'Cause when push comes to shove, I will kill your friends and family to remind you of my love. Da 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 da, everybody. Da 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 da. I said everybody. Da 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 da. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
That was wonderful, Ted. I loved it. Oh, gosh, yeah, the fully armed battalion to remind you of my love. Oh, yes, I love it. I'm going to read for you an essay entitled "Laughter is the Best Medicine," written by Peter McWilliams and published in 2014 in the book Chicken Soup for the Surviving Soul. Many years ago, Norman Cousins, journalist, author, world peace advocate who considered himself a friend of Unitarian Universalism, was diagnosed as terminally ill. He was given 6 months to live. His chance for recovery was 1 in 500, he was told. He could see the worry, depression, and anger in his life contributed to and perhaps helped cause his disease. He wondered, if illness can be caused by negativity, can wellness be created by positivity? He decided to make an experiment of himself. Laughter was one of the most positive activities he knew. He rented all the funny movies he could find: Keaton, Chaplin, W.C. Fields, the Marx Brothers, and this was before they had VCRs, so he had to rent the actual films. He read funny stories. He asked his friends to call him whenever they said, heard, or did something funny. His pain was so great that he could not sleep. Laughing for 10 solid minutes, though, he found, relieved the pain for several hours so that he could sleep. He fully recovered from his illness and lived another 20 happy, healthy, and productive years. And his journey is detailed in his book called Anatomy of an Illness. He credits visualization, the love of his family and friends, and laughter for his recovery. Now, some people think laughter is a waste of time. It is a luxury, they say, a frivolity, something to indulge in, only every so often. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Laughter is essential to our equilibrium, to our well-being, to our aliveness. If we're not well, laughter helps us get well. If we are well, laughter helps us stay that way. Since Cousins' groundbreaking subjective work, scientific studies have shown that laughter has a curative effect on the body, the mind, and the emotions. So if you like laughter, consider it sound medical advice to indulge in it as often as you can. If you don't like laughter, well, then take your medicine. Laugh anyway. Use whatever makes you laugh: movies, sitcoms, Monty Python, records, books, New Yorker cartoons, jokes, friends, whatever it takes. Give yourself permission to laugh, loud and long and out loud, whenever anything strikes you as funny. The people around you may think you're strange, but sooner or later they'll join in, even if they don't know what you're laughing about. Some diseases may be contagious, but none is as contagious as the cure: laughter. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Joseph Moran. He's a member of Toledo First Unitarian Church, and he's presented several entertaining and thought-provoking programs for us in the past. Now, again, he's agreed to come visit, share his thoughts on one of his favorite topics, religion and humor.
Well, thank you, Lynn. I'm not King Henry the, what? Not King Henry. King George. I was at the Cleveland Art Museum yesterday or the day before, and there's an exhibition on the Tudors. So I'm confusing my kings. Nevertheless, I'm back, not as the king, but nevertheless, thank you for having me back again to your church. Also, I just want to say this, these words from Lord Byron: always laugh when you can. It's cheap medicine. It never would normally occur to probably most of us to ask a person how humor might fit in with their religious experience, how it might be viewed by their religion, or how it might be viewed by their prophets if they have them, or priests or figures, deities. And yet I think this can tell us a great deal about the person itself, themselves, and about their religious experience, what they're looking for in the religious experience. I know that I find that if I'm at an event where there's a speaker and they can introduce some laughter, some humor, I find that much more attentive to what they have to say. This topic actually came up at my multi-faith men's group probably about 1 year ago. And I've decided to use some of that discussion for my reflection today. I had a personal experience with a lack of laughter in a church I was a member of for many years prior to becoming Unitarian about 12 years ago. And that was the Reorganized Latter-day Saint Church, now known as a Community of Christ, not to be confused with the Latter-day Saint Church, which you probably better known as the Mormons. Several members of the congregation I belonged to were very opposed to laughter, especially during church services, but some of them anywhere in the church building. And while I could find nothing in at least two of their books that they used, two of the religious books, those being the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants, where did they get this from? Well, here are some statements from both of their prophets, Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. Joseph Smith: neither should they be given to loud laughter or light and foolish speeches, for these are not only unbecoming, but are grievous sins in the sight of the Lord. And Brigham Young: the revelations in the Bible, Book of Mormon, and Doctrine and Covenants teach us to be sober, and I want you to remember them. When I laugh, I see my folly and nothingness and weakness, and am ashamed of myself. I have to say that in comparing the many subdued and solemn Christian church services like the RLDS I've attended over the years, and the few Black Baptist churches I've attended, one couldn't help but notice the difference in the outpouring of laughter, joy, and emotion in those Black Baptist congregations. They really did encourage a laying down of one's burdens, and what Psalm 100 says, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. I hope none of us will be ashamed to laugh this morning. My goal is to share the role of humor in 5 of the world's great religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism in that order, without neglecting us UUs, and along the way share a few jokes. I believe we Unitarians as a whole have a healthy sense of humor, one that allows us to laugh at ourselves. And despite our small numbers, of course, we are the butt of many jokes. What sense of humor does God or gods and prophets possess? And in what way is humor allowed in their interactions and between their followers? What I have found is that what is defined as funny and laughable varies by religion, denominations within religion, and within religions over time. We should also recognize that while a particular faith may place limits on humor, the larger culture in which it is part may have a more tolerant view. So we find a rich history of comedy and comedians in Jewish secular culture. And today, an increasingly large one among people of Muslim backgrounds, with Muslim backgrounds. Psychologists tell us that people with a sense of humor, especially those that can take a joke at their own expense, tend to be more secure in their identities. Scientists tell us that something is humorous, and the physiological response of laughter is uniquely human. Laughing hyenas are not really laughing. They're making a high-pitched cackle sound that sounds like human laughter. While the physiology of laughter is fairly well understood by now, humor is more complex. I may find something hilarious that you find something less than hilarious. I'm defining humor today as words or statements and behaviors such as jokes, sarcasm, puns, pranks, slapstick, anything of that nature that would bring a smile to the listener, a laugh, even a giggle. Many religious jokes are about stereotypes, like the one I'm going to tell now, a Unitarian joke. Stereotypes, of course, are generalized beliefs about a member of a group that may or may not have a grain of truth, but they are overgeneralizations. The jokes I've chosen to tell this morning are ones I think no member of a religion would find offensive. Some do involve stereotypes and may require some explanation to get it. Since we're in a Unitarian church and not a Mormon one, laughter is permitted. And no one should be ashamed of themselves and see their nothingness. But no one also is required to laugh either. So here is a Unitarian version of the old light bulb joke. How many Unitarians does it take to change a light bulb? Any offers on that one there? How many? A whole bunch, okay. Any ideas? Okay. Well, we as Unitarians choose not to make a statement either for or against changing a light bulb. It is really a matter of recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of the bulb. Now, you know, the light bulb is a part of the natural web of the universe, and through research by Edison evolved over many years. And if you, in your own journey, however, find it necessary to change a bulb, that is just fine. You're invited to write a poem or compose a modern dance about your relationship with light bulbs and present at our annual light bulb communion service, where we'll explore a number of light bulb traditions: incandescent, fluorescent, neon, three-way, long life LED, all equally valid paths to luminescence. It's also proposed that a committee be established to discuss the merits of making any such change. Now, many religious jokes involve comparing beliefs and practices of several religions, like this one. So an older, lifelong unchurched man, realizing that his days were probably numbered, urges to find a faith and sets out to find one. His first stop is a Roman Catholic church, where he asks what he has to do to join. The priest mentions their catechism, an affirmation of the Nicene and Apostles' Creed, and then, just to see how much the man already knows, asks, do you know where Jesus was born? Pittsburgh? He tentatively asks. No, cried the shocked priest, we're not for you. So he stops, the next stop is a Southern Baptist church, where he's told by the pastor that he would need to learn certain Bible verses and accept their literal interpretation, also swear to the Nicene and Apostles' Creed, swear off booze, and be baptized by immersion, not some sissy sprinkling. The preacher then, to test the man on how much he knew, asked him also where Jesus was born. And this time, knowing it's not Pittsburgh, he tentatively says, Philadelphia? Get out of here, said the Reverend. His next stop, of course, was a Unitarian Universalist church, where the pastor said all he had to do was to sign the membership book. You mean I don't have to renounce anything or swear anything or be dunked? That's right, said the pastor. We have no special tests for membership, no dogma. Well, you can sign me up, said the man, but could you please tell me where Jesus was born? Why, Bethlehem, of course, said the pastor. The man's face lit up. I knew it was somewhere in Pennsylvania. The holy books of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have been characterized as being devoid of humor, but there's been a growing effort to recover the humor in these sacred texts. And I begin with Judaism because, being the oldest of the Abrahamic religions, it may shed some light on what Christianity and Islam later came to find as acceptable. While limits to what can be defined as humorous are found in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. Judaism is undoubtedly the most liberal of the Abrahamic faiths, with Christianity second and Islam a distant third. The liberalism has undoubtedly influenced the denomination of secular comedy by people like Jack Benny, Seinfeld, the Marx Brothers, Mel Brooks, and many more. So let's begin with Torah. In Genesis, when God reveals to the aged Abraham and Sarah that they're about to have a child, they laugh at the implausibility for which God upbraids them for laughing. The child is named Isaac, and that name in Hebrew means he who laughs. The child, this moment is crucial in the Jewish faith because it allows for laughing in a situation to God, but not at God. After Isaac's birth, Sarah says, God has brought me laughter. Everyone who hears this will laugh with me. The Psalms are full of references to laughter, but there's also a way of joking that is said to be demeaning and harmful. In Psalms, one of the Psalms here, I guess Psalm 37:13, God laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming. And in Ecclesiastes, course 3:4, the well-known, there is a time to weep and a time to laugh. The Jewish festival of Purim, just passed from the book of Esther, is a holiday notable for Purim spiels, with humorous depictions of its characters, especially the bad guy, Haman. The Talmud, a compilation of generations of rabbinic debate about biblical interpretations, law, and philosophy, relates the practice of the sage Rabbah, who before beginning to teach matters of Jewish law would say something humorous to his students. Rabbah determined that the best way to prepare his law students for their complex Torah studies was to begin with a joke. And I must say, in a different context than drug and alcohol group counseling, which I've been part of, from time to time to be able to introduce humor in the discussion with clients. It relaxes the group, increases their willingness to share their story. The following tale stereotypes Jewish mothers as overprotective and intrusive in the life of their children, but also speaks to the relationship I just mentioned of Jews to their God. So an atheist grandmother, claiming Jewish cultural roots, takes her grandson to the beach. Decked out in a swimsuit, hat and pail, and shovel, he happily plays near the water's edge, building sandcastles. While the grandmother is napping, the boy is swept by an undertow into the water and is nowhere in sight. The grandmother awakens and frantically yells for help, but no one is there. Figuring she has nothing to lose, she falls to the ground, raises her arm, and prays to heaven. God, if you exist, if you are there, hear my prayer. Please save my grandson. I'll make it up to you. I'll go to synagogue. I'll join Hadassah. I'll play Maj. Whatever makes you happy. No sooner said than a giant wave tosses the boy from the shore up at her feet. She bent over to see his heart beating, breathing, noticed color return to his cheeks and his eyes fluttering, but she still appeared to be upset. Standing up with her hands on her hips, she wagged her finger at the sky. He had a hat, you know. Humor is possible in this situation because saving the child was not enough. But it should be noted that the grandmother speaks to God, not for God. In typical Jewish fashion, God is personalized. God is someone who can be berated and cajoled because God is part of the family. Some jokes play on ignorance of one religion about another, even their own, as this one. Avram went into a Christian church and took out his tallis, yarmulke, and began to pray. The clergyman entered to start the service and said, "Will all non-Christians please leave?" Avram continued to pray. Again, the clergyman said, "Will all non-Christians please leave now?" Avram prayed. Finally, the distraught clergyman went up to Avram. "Will all Jews please leave?" At this, Avram removed his yarmulke, packed up his tallis, and then proceeded forward to the altar, where he picked up a small statue of Jesus and said, "Come on, Bubba, they don't want us here anymore." Let's move to Christianity. Many Christian jokes are about sins, such as adultery, bearing false witness, or lying. A minister told his congregation, "Next week I plan to talk about the sin of lying." To help you understand my sermon, I want you all to read Mark chapter 17. The following Sunday, as he prepared to deliver his remarks, he asked for a show of hand of how many had read Mark 17. Several hands went up. The minister smiled and said, "Mark only has 16 chapters. Now I will begin my sermon on lying." Few religious communities have considered humor to be a problem more so than Christianity. And one scholar has commented that years of conditioning has rendered the New Testament filled with predictable and innocuous stories in which serious people speak serious language filled with moralisms and legalisms about God and by extension Jesus, who becomes humorless and capable of enjoying a joke. The early church fathers were generally suspicious of and hostile toward humor and religion, humor and laughter. Examples of this are found in many of the early church monks and hermits of the 3rd century. St. Anthony, for example, regarded as a model who, like Jesus, was never said to have laughed. John Chrysostom in the 4th century made a point that Jesus never laughed. He spoke of laughter and mirth as leading to sin, and that members of his church who were laughing instead should have been praying. And who could possibly laugh when they thought of the suffering of Christ on the cross? Despite the long tradition of denying that Jesus laughed and perhaps lacked a sense of humor, there's been considerable debate on his sayings and parables, some of which can be certainly regarded as humorous. Some have pointed out that his statement in Matthew that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven certainly gave some evidence that Jesus had a sense of humor. Despite this, scholars are still uncertain on his relation to humor. Jesus apparently recognized the existence of laughter when in Luke he says, and this sounds remarkably similar to what we find in Psalms, "Blessed are you who weep now, you will laugh, and woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep." Catholic theologians like Karl Rahner have emphasized the humanity of Christ as God who took human flesh and human nature, and thus humanity. Humanity for Raffner means the full slate of human emotions, and that must include laughter. I'm moving along here, and I'm trying to see. I'm a lot out of order here. I'm quite a bit out of order. Okay, so they must include joy and laughter. While the New Testament contains little to encourage humor explicitly, and the early church fathers cautioned against it, the presence of humor in Christian rituals is certainly known, and a good example being the Catholic festival of Carnival during the Lent season. And Pope Francis is frequently pictured smiling broadly, and he had this to say about humor. "Joy is the best witness we can offer to God's people whom we are called to serve. The joyful witness comes in many forms, especially through a sense of humor. It is sad to see consecrated men and women who have no sense of humor and who take everything so seriously." Islam. I began my discussion of humor with Judaism and Christianity with a joke. Joking in Islam and about Islam's holy book, the Quran, and Prophet Muhammad is widely viewed by Muslims as prohibited. However, jokes told by Muslims at the expense of members of different Arab and non-Arab nations is not uncommon. While several websites exist on humor in Islam and its prophet, I found jokes that were either simple one-liners or portrayed Muslims in a negative light, often as terrorists, neither place I wanted to go. Becoming aware of what a religion thinks is prohibited joking is a function of the golden rule in reverse, not doing unto another's religion what one would not want have done to one's own. It's also a matter of becoming educated on what a religion considers acceptable. While free speech and press are highly valued in the West, and in many places, with freedom comes responsibility and awareness. What does the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad himself say on this issue? The Quran discourages laughter in 4 situations that I believe most of us can understand. It discourages laughter in situations where insults someone, or humor that mocks Islam and even other Abrahamic religions, humor that involves lying to make people laugh, and humor that frightens or scares someone. Here are a few hadith or stories told about Muhammad laughing in regard to laughter. In Hadith 114, his wife Aisha reported that she never saw Muhammad laugh to the extent you could see his uvula. He would only smile. In Hadith 1413, a companion of Muhammad said that he and others would talk about manners pertaining to the days of ignorance, that's the days before the Quran was revealed, and he would only smile. However, in Hadith, yet in Hadith 365, a companion of Muhammad said, I indeed saw the messenger of Allah smile. Then there are, of course, non-Hadith stories, and one which another companion says, place a limit on your jokes, for going to extremes makes you lose respect and incites the foolish against you. So it's clear that Islam has a different viewpoint of what is permissible, and I think that should be understood. Hinduism. There's no body of myth richer in humor than in that of India. A study of how Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and atheists reacted to both religious and non-religious jokes, including irreverent ones, revealed that Hindus demonstrated the highest overall appreciation of humor, while Muslims had the highest incidence of being offended by religious jokes. Atheists were least likely to be offended by religious jokes, although all groups agreed that if a joke was offensive, its funniness was reduced. Hindu jokes are a class of ethnic jokes based on the lifestyle of Hindus and some of the commonest religious beliefs in Hinduism. They often involve satire of ascetics and Brahmins, that being the highest caste, that stereotype their ritualism and defects. Here is an example. Once a Brahmin priest hired a boatman for crossing the Ganga River. On the way, he asked the boatman, have you read the Ramayana? The boatman said no. He says, then 25% of your life has been wasted. In the same way, he asked the boatman, have you read the Mahabharata? The boatman said no. Well, 50% of your life has been wasted. He finally asked, have you read the Rig Veda? The boatman said, no. 75% of your life, has been wasted. The boatman asked the Brahmin, do you know how to swim? He said, because the boat has a hole in it, and 100% of your life has been wasted. Tolerance is a key element of Indian originated religions, and as such, something I never really knew before, they have no concept of blasphemy. Humor is an important theme running through the Hindu Vedas, the epics, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana. It has been suggested that the Hindu view of the world as an illusion, in contrast to Western idea of reality, sets up a potentially comic situation. Seen from the perspective of this higher truth, the events of the mundane world we live in can take on the quality of a joke in Hinduism. The Hindu spring festival of Holi just passed on March 8th, is a festival of colors. It celebrates good and evil, love and happiness, and it's a day filled with laughter. In recent years, Indian politics has turned in the direction of portraying India as first and foremost a Hindu nation. And some Indians have shared their fears that this may eventually restrict Hindu humor and jokes to the world's largest democracy with a long, long history of tolerance. Buddhism. Some jokes are based on a person of one religion not being aware of the meaning a person attaches to a concept. So a couple are vacationing in Thailand and they decide to visit a Buddhist monastery. Outside the monastery is a small stand where a monk is selling memorabilia. So the couple decides to buy a mandala that costs $4.35, and they hand the monk a $5 bill. The monk hands over the mandala, and the couple wait for their change. Not getting it, they ask the monk for the change, and the monk replies, "Change comes from within." Buddhism derives many of its philosophical elements from Hinduism, which predates it by about 2,000 years. Buddhism, founded by Gautama Buddha around 600 BC, is really BCE, we're using the BCE, is really as much of a philosophy as a religion. And while all schools of Buddhism thought Buddha's contemporaries describe him as ever smiling, there is conflict as to whether the Buddha ever laughed. While in the Mahayana branch of Buddhism, laughing is permissible, in the Theravada branch, it is not accepted with as much approval because its monastic rules, which state that the Buddha made it clear that monks were not allowed to laugh so much as their teeth could be shown. It was all right to smile, but to laugh out loud would be contrary to the monk's good behavior, while laughing was associated with sensual desire and a lack of mindfulness. So what about the large laughing Buddhas we find in many of our Chinese restaurants? The laughing Buddha is not the original Gautama Buddha, but believed to have been a 10th century Chinese monk known as Budai that attained Buddhahood for his devotion. He's a wandering monk known to take sadness away from people through his demeanor, smile, laughing, and so on. The Dalai Lama, who I show here if you can see it on the front piece, is known for his playfulness and has said that by being playful and using humor, people will become more observant of their faith, more empathetic, and less bored. Echoing the sage Rava here, he says, the less bored people are, the more they're ready to learn and be mindful. When people let out their playful side, they have a better sense of all-around being. No matter how difficult your life is, this approach will bring something deeper. I love smiles. My wish is to see more smiles, real smiles. He then says something that I think shows some pretty interesting sociological insight. If we want those smiles, we need to create the reasons that make them appear. In other words, it's us to create the conditions that make people smile. What are those conditions? Well, I think the 7 principles of the Unitarian faith is a good start. And to that I say, go in peace, go in joy, go in humor. Thank you.
Okay, I think now Ted is going to treat us to a special song.
Well, I was.
Whoa.
Let me try this again. I was gonna have us sing this one, but there's a song that was written by a UU minister in the 60s, a take on I am the very model of a modern Major General, but it's I am the very model of a modern Unitarian. And a congregation in Utah did their own spin on that song, so it's now 2 steps removed. And I just thought it was best for us to actually get to hear their rendition, because a lot of it's personal to their congregation, and they send up both themselves and the UUs as a whole. So Kevin, or I can't see who's at the computer, but if you wouldn't mind clicking and then maximizing, and then I think we'll be good to go.
He is the very model of a modern Unitarian. He was born Romanian, so don't call him Bulgarian. He's also not from Budapest, Ukraine, or Lithuania. He probably is the coolest thing to come from Transylvania.
I am the very model of a modern Unitarian. I'm here because I lived so long, I'm now octogenarian. With 50 years attendance, I'm a very senior resident. Although I'm better looking, I am older than the president.
Although he's better looking, he is older than the president. Although he's better looking, he is older than the president. Although he's better looking, he is older than the president.
We're educated, cultivated, liberal, and turning gray.
We all like Shakespeare, opera, ballet, and we all drink Beaujolais.
We're all egalitarian and we're humanitarian. We are the very model of a modern Unitarian. We are the very model of a modern Unitarian. We're ethical, sustainable, and also vegetarian. If you would like to join us, it would not be so regrettable. We have a lot of recipes and some of them are edible.
We are the very model of some modern Unitarians.
Our masters of theology have made us seminarians.
We never preach damnation and we don't have a confessional.
We're open and inclusive, and we're also quite professional.
They're open and inclusive and they're also quite professional. They're open and inclusive and they're also quite professional. They're open and inclusive and they're also quite professional.
We're always looking for new ways to make the world a better place.
The Utah politics ensure we often fall down on our face.
We're all egalitarian and we're humanitarian. We are the very model of a modern Unitarian.
Yellow.
I am the very model of a modern Unitarian. Devotion to the evidence has made me a contrarian. If you're the optimistic type, believing everything you read, consider that a friend like me is just the very thing you need.
I am the very model of a modern Unitarian. I'm coming out the closet and confessing I'm a thespian. I realize the second line does not rhyme with the rest of it. But being gay in Utah helps you learn to make the best of it. But being gay in Utah helps you learn to make the best of it. But being gay in Utah helps you learn to make the best of it. But being gay in Utah helps you learn to make the best of it. While driving in our Priuses, NPR gives us our news.
Mind your P's and Q's, for some of us are LGBTQs. LGBTQs. Some of us are homosexuals.
There's also a couple of YouTube videos of the original version if you're curious to see the original lyrics. I just like that they made this about themselves.
Oh, could we put that on our website, maybe? That was wonderful. Oh, my gosh. Okay, let's see. What's next here? Oh, okay. Well, I'm supposed to talk about the connection of today's service with our Unitarian Universalist principles. Well, I love being a UU because here no one turns around and stares at me when I laugh out loud at something that I find funny in one of our services. Like Joe said, you know, we're not ashamed to laugh. In some churches where services consist of the solemn rituals, the incense, the chanting, the kneeling, and praying, laughing out loud is definitely inappropriate and certainly frowned upon, as Joe mentioned. But in a UU church, our third principle specifically says we strive to accept one another and encourage each other towards spiritual growth. I'm glad there's no footnote saying you are not allowed to have fun while acting on this principle. Notice that the principle doesn't say we accept each other instantly and completely without question. It says we strive to accept. That's the key. Acceptance is sometimes a little difficult for me when I find a person to be annoying or cranky. If possible, I try to remember or remind myself to respond in a joking or humorous way to their behavior. If I can remember to do it, this approach usually lightens the mood for both of us, whereas if I'm hostile or frustrated, no good at all comes out of our interaction. And as far as accepting a statement that I might consider outrageous, I try to engage the person in further dialogue, humorous if possible, to see if there's anything about the statement that makes any sense. I don't know about you, but I find the phrase encouragement to spiritual growth a little intimidating. It sounds so serious. Sometimes my most uplifting episodes of spiritual growth follow on the heels of a good belly laugh provoked by some crazy statement made by a fellow Unitarian as we debate about what constitutes spiritual growth. In addition to our third principle, I think Joe's talk about religion and humor ties in with our fifth principle of seeking world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. People who laugh together tend to like each other. And sometimes they even develop love and compassion for each other, leading to a feeling of interconnectedness and community. If the whole world could laugh together, I think the goal of our fifth principle might actually someday be achieved. Now, it's time to pass our offertory basket. Most of us are members of the church, and we support the church by making regular pledges. But if you don't do that, feel free to put some cash or a check in the basket today as we pass it around. And you can also, people at home can, I think there's a way to do PayPal or something. So if you want to play some music, and we'll pass the basket. Oh, we're still going? Keep going, keep going. Great. Now is the time for sharing of joys, concerns, and milestones. Zoom.
So now, after joys and concerns, we take a minute to breathe together and then to be silent together. Our closing words today are adapted from the writings of Anne Greta Crow Nielsen. She is a member of the Danish Lutheran Church and Cultural Center of Southern California, and she says, humor, like humility, comes from the same root word in Latin for humanity, and that root word is humus. Or hummus? Humus. It is not hummus. Humus. The dictionary defines humus as the organic component of soil.
So thus, this word humus, gosh, I'm getting mixed up with hummus. Humus, which literally means the lowly earth, is the source for all three of these words: humor, humility, and humanity. Is it any surprise that we must have a sense of humility to be able to laugh at ourselves, and that laughter reminds us of our shared humanity? Please join me in reading the words for extinguishing our chalice. Oh, and Rich, we need you again to come up and put out the flame. It's a double duty job. Yeah. I forgot to tell you that we need you at the end, too. You're going to extinguish the chalice while we read the following reading. Are you ready? Okay. May we continue to feel hopeful and connected, thankful and at peace as we go our separate ways. As we leave this house of joy and sorrow, sharing and laughter, may we remember what has been and look forward to what will be. Now it is the time for announcements, and I know Joe has one. Does anyone else have announcements? Any announcements? Come on up.
I want to make everyone aware that on March the 22nd, that's this Wednesday, from 6 to 8 p.m. at First Unitarian Church of Toledo, that's 3205 Glendale Avenue, there will be a meeting, a community meeting called Protecting Young People from Violence. And as you all are aware, violence, we're awash in violence. Everywhere you look, there's violence. We like violence. I think we like violence. And of course, the shootings in Toledo are just normal, business as usual. So a member of the congregation, Judy Pascalis, has put together this kind of a town hall meeting. And at the meeting, there will be violence interrupters. Maybe you've heard that term. These are people that work with youth and anyone that potentially is a victim or a perpetrator. So there'll be violence interrupters there. There will be a 20-minute movie called Sons of Toledo, which is a very powerful movie about violence, and particularly in Toledo. We will hear from Toledo Safety Director Brian Bird. We'll be hearing from the Commissioner of Violence Prevention, David Bush, and we'll be hearing from Associate Professor Heather Sloan from the University of Toledo on how violence traumatizes children. So, and there'll be officials from the Toledo Public Schools, the Workforce Development, the Cherry Street Mission, and many others. So you're all invited to attend. It should be very informative. And I don't think that violence is just something we find in Toledo. I'm sure there's violence in the Bowling Green area, everywhere you go. So
You brought some flyers, and you have a couple of
I
copies,
have a
right?
couple, but you could print off
We
more
can-
too.
Yeah, I can make more copies.
Sure.
We'll put them out maybe on the greeting, or if people can come up to you and ask one, and then if you run out, I'll make some more.
Sure.
Thank you, Joe. And now we have a final closing song. Do you want to say anything about it, Ted?
This is one I think we can all sing along to, and I think we have lyrics on the projector, as well as I think there were inserts if you want to use whichever one is easier for you to see. This land is your land. Ooh, a little bit loud there. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. I roamed and rambled, I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. The sun comes shining, and I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving, and the dust clouds rolling. The voice was chanting as the fog was lifting. This land was made for you and me. This is the first verse, everybody. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest